like much of all artistry, that really does require someone to pass that tradition on personally.
Yeah, exactly that. So, I've got plans for a little business called Casey and Co, which is is going to be a bootmaking business. And the actual and Co are going to be some young people that I'm actually going to train as bootmakers, so that when I've gone, the legacy can go on, really.
I'm Kirby Allison, and I love helping the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes. Join me as we explore the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. In today's video, we continue our London Update series. This time we visit with one of my favorite shoemakers in the world, Dominic Casey. Of course, anyone that is a fan of this channel certainly is a fan of Dominic Casey, as we have filmed a lot of just some of our favorite content with him. So Dominic, it's so great to see you. I hate having to do this over the computer because you should have been in Dallas this week.
Yes, exactly, yes. So unfortunately, due to COVID, and all of our travel plans have gone away. So yeah, we were looking forward to meeting up and making some films together and having a glass or two of beer, which would have been nice. But
I know.
Here we are.
COVID, it's ruining so many of the things we look forward to. I guess, how are you doing? You still making shoes?
I think interestingly enough, when I just done my first trunk show in March, and I was actually in New York on my first ever trunk show when President Trump closed the country down, really. So, there was a slight air of panic as I thought, crikey, I'm not going to be getting out of here. The wife's not going to see me for the next 6 months, but managed to get a flight home. But what that really did in terms of my business was really just close it down from the majority of my clients are based in America. A lot of them have come through the channel and the films that we've made. So really, it's kind of put a lot of stuff on hold. I still have work based in the UK and based in Europe. But, what it's done is actually given me time to actually think about developing the business, thinking about working on, as I've mentioned to you before, I've got a lifelong passion for riding boots. And, I'm deeply concerned about, the future of riding boots across the world, really. So I think it's actually given me some space to actually think about, perhaps restructuring something and thinking about how I can move forward with my kind of boot plans, really.
Well, that's certainly a topic that we've discussed a lot about, and just kind of, certainly a shared kind of interest, because as you mentioned, if the tradition of shoemaking is, at risk, the tradition of bootmaking is like endangered. There's probably fewer than 5 bespoke bootmakers left in all of England.
Yeah, exactly. Probably even less than that, Kirby. I suppose there's the big West End firms that still make riding boots, but I think with the decline of riding and the decline of long boot making, they do less and less. So what's happening is that the skills to make those things are genuinely disappearing, the craftsmen to make them. And, my concern is that they just become something, a sort of footnote in history, really. So, as we've talked about before, my long-term thing in the next few years really is to try and re-establish something there.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to do something. It's kind of like the turn to pumps. That particular style of making shoes has really all but been lost.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a unique thing. And again, as we've talked about before, you may remember when we visited Stephen Lowe at Crispinian's and we did the glass making thing, is you need to have a tree maker as well. And if you think riding boots is in danger, tree makers you virtually can't find at all, anywhere in the world, So without a good tree maker, you can't be a riding boot maker. And it's as simple as that, really.
Well, and quite literally, it's not that you can't make the trees to take care of the riding boots after you've made the boots, but you were sharing that you literally can't make the boots without the trees.
Without the trees, yes. So you've got to have all of the leg, and because that's where the shape comes from. And so it's not just about carving a last, it's about carving a whole leg. And then actually preserving the boots on that leg shape, really. So it's an incredibly complicated and rare thing. But, I'm fired up and going already, Kirby. I'm talking about boots, and we've only been here for 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, I'd love the opportunity to really kind of preserve that, because it is such an oral tradition. Shoemaking, at the end of the day, is passed on, from craftsman to craftsman. It's not something that you can really teach yourself just by reading books. I mean, you can certainly learn something by reading books, but really at the end of the day, like much of all artistry, it really does require someone to pass that tradition on personally.
Yeah, exactly that. So, I've got plans for a little business called Casey & Co., which is is going to be a bootmaking business. And the actual & Co. are going to be some young people that I'm actually going to train as bootmakers, so that when I've gone, the legacy can go on, really. When my hands can't do it anymore, at least there'll be some other hands that have trained in the business. So it's not just about making the boots, it's about preserving the skills and training some other people to carry on afterwards, really. So I just feel that's an important thing to do.
Well, as one of the things that you mentioned, I mean, one of the, benefits of COVID is it's given us all a little bit of extra time, if you will, to focus on kind of spare projects. And, for us, it's been, kind of thinking about, what's the next pair of shoes? What's the next project we tackle? And I'm terrified to say that you've really made it a very, very difficult decision for me with your most recent care package. We had a video that we filmed, kind of a beautiful unboxing, and I have to say, you sent me some incredible things, one of them being this beautiful Wellington boot that at the time we filmed it, I didn't realize was a gift. And I just don't even know what to say in terms of your generosity there. I mean, I couldn't be just more blown away and more thankful. I've always wanted a vintage model of a riding boot because this, in so many ways, as far as shoemaking is concerned, is kind of like the peak of shoemaking, and it's even more archaic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 110 years old, you're not going to see craftsmanship I'd like to think we're going to try and re-establish some craftsmanship like that. But, I mean, that's an exceptional fine thing. Yeah, so, yes, as I said before, a man with a brand called Wellington needs to have a Wellington boot on his office, I think, on his table. That's a big paperweight, Kirby.
I mean, an original Wellington boot, probably at least 100 years old, original trees. I mean, this is really a museum piece, so thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And I look forward to getting together in person to really talk about this, because I know that, there's so many unique ways, or unique elements in terms of how a riding boot is made that is completely different from bespoke shoemaking. It bears no resemblance.
Exactly, that's a whole different animal you got sitting on your table now from the patterns that we've got that I sent you as well, for the other shoes. That's a completely different beast.
I mean, there's no question that bootmaking is a beast, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's not only complicated, but really physically laborious, just in terms of the amount of work and strength, even to last the leather. I mean, it just, bears no resemblance to a London city shoe at all.
Yeah, no. But I think what's interesting about those Wellingtons particularly, that as we've talked about before, they were the height of men's fashion wear, and that feels more like what I would describe as a city boot. It's not a country riding boot. As we talked about before, it's got the beveled waist, it's got a small heel, it's got the pitched heel to it. So it's much more refined than a classical riding boot. A riding boot would have a much bigger heel on it with a different shape to it. It would have a square waist for supporting the weight of the rider in the stirrups, etc., etc. So it's very much more a kind of style. It's almost a London-styled evening boot, or a dress boot, really, that one there.
It's really hard to believe. I mean, it's absolutely spectacular. And then, of course, you sent a little bit of homework, and so I'm happy to kind of report back to see if you might grade my work. So this was the spiral cut, Balmoral.
Yeah, looks good. Looks good.
This was probably even easier than the Capto Oxfords, just fewer pieces. It's just a kind of align the laces.
Yeah, you can't argue. I mean, that's kind of a really unique design and concept. And that's really comes from what we were talking about before with the John Lobbs spiral full brogue, the pattern we made before. So that's maybe an extension of it. So really that style really comes from that idea, really, Kirby. Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say the little design at the back. If you look at the design at the back where there's a seamless back, but it comes down into a little V-cut shape at the bottom there. If you look on the back of the Wellington, on the heel counter at the back of the Wellington, that's a design feature which is pinched off the Wellington boot there. So that little, yeah, exactly, that little V shape coming down there comes off the Wellington boot. If you look at the Wellington boot on the heel counter, Kirby, it's actually on the Wellington boot. Yeah, it's a very classic styling of a Wellington boot, is that little V shape in the heel counter. So I just popped it on the back of the shoe there for you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love, the way that you're kind of able to work these kind of really subtle kind of stylistic details into the shoe that totally make it personalized.
But that's what we often talk about. It's the idea of making bespoke. It's about making something, the bespoke process is about making something unique to you, not to anybody else. That's what bespoke is, isn't it, really? And it's not, I often think that it's not my job to make you a pair of shoes. My style is different from your style, so a bespoke maker, I always think, should make what actually you want, not in your style, not what I want, So I like to try and step my own style back from these things and tie all of the design into whatever a client wants, really. So, I always think it's important to really talk to the client, understand what they want and what they want from their bespoke shoes, really.
Well, I think one of the benefits, too, of kind of that relationship with an independent shoemaker is that you've got more latitude to really be in that conversation, to build the depth and meaning behind that relationship, to really personalize the experience. I mean, I've always been of the opinion that the relationship is the cornerstone, really, of the bespoke process, and that, the richer and the, really the richer and the more meaningful that relationship, really the better bespoke products that you get out.
Yeah, so my job really is to actually give you some options. But as you say, you've probably got too many options now. You suddenly think, oh, my goodness, where do we start?
I wish it was, I was like, a prince or something. I could just say, I'll take them all. This is basically the mock-up of the pattern here.
So that's what I would do next in terms of designing for a bespoke client. I would actually just, once I've conceived of the pattern, I just actually make one up out of some leather, because I'd need to check that the pattern, the balance looks right, everything is going to work as an actual shoe. Especially with that type of pattern, because if you look at the front of the pattern, it's very straight, but if you look at the front of the last, you've got a very strong curve there. So it's technically very difficult to actually get one piece to be curved like that, to create that curvature. So, whilst the pattern's flat, that's very curved. So, you need to do something like that just to check out and work out how the whole thing is going to work, really.
And it's an interesting, I've never seen a shoemaker, again, approach it kind of with this level of detail, right, of actually, providing to the client, kind of like a physical mock-up, or, in the case of the spiral cut wingtip, actually kind of sewing it together and sending it to sea. And again, I think one of the most difficult challenges with bespoke is the visualization of it.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you're being this creative. It's one thing to just take a look at a sample and say, okay, I'll take that in black, dark brown, and burgundy. But to totally conceive something new, sometimes it's hard to really envision what that'll look like as an actual final product.
And I think you actually have to help the client do that. As we said, it's a journey, it's a dialogue, it's a process. So we actually have to kind of work together to, and sometimes these things, they start out as ideas, but you've actually got to then make them into some three-dimensional shape. So this is part of the dialogue, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely. And so we're trying to decide, I feel like, my next two pairs of shoes, I don't know how it's going to kind of really go. One of them, I just love the idea of the black pigskin.
Yeah.
Right? Black classic shoe. It really works well with kind of the, kind of my color palette. But having pigskin gives you that visual texture and detail. And really that touch of bespoke, because you just don't see pigskin being used in any ready-to-wear shoes. And so you've sent some various samples of pigskin, and you sent a photograph, too, of a vintage Anthony Cleverly model.
Yeah.
A black, was it a semi-brogue?
Yeah, so what I really wanted to illustrate and show you with that shoe is that it's about the detailing and it's about the punching there. So that's a very simple shoe. Because the pigskin has got a lot of texture on it anyway, you have to be really careful with the punching and the size of the punching, and you can get different looks by different punching sizes, different gimping sizes as well. So that's something that we really need to just think about and discuss as well as part of the process, really.
Yeah, and here, I mean, again, looking at kind of the detail of the bespoke design process, actually sending, physical samples of the punching on the material. And so, talk a little bit about this. So you said that, there were 3 samples that you sent, one with kind of a traditional larger punching, so single punch, double punch, single, double, and kind of larger pinking, which I think works well with the pigskin because it doesn't get lost in that texture. But for example, you sent me another one that's kind of in the middle, which I think is certainly more on the refined side. But then a third that you have listed is the kind of original Anthony Cleverly style. So talk a bit about this because I'd never seen this before.
Yeah, so that one, the original Anthony Cleverly style, is the one that they've got on the picture. So that's how he punched that pigskin, on there.
Gosh, you almost think you wouldn't even have seen it.
Yeah, and if you actually look at the picture, it's not very bold in the picture of the Anthony Cleverly shoe. It's very light, the punching. So it's almost something, which is an interesting idea because it's almost something that you only notice on a second glance. So it's not visually very prominent to start off with. You'd actually have to stop and look closely at the shoes to see that it was punched and gimped at all, really. Because as you say, the texture almost disguises it, really. So it has a different visual impact. Whereas the bold one, you're perfectly correct, the bold one with the big punching and the big gimping is very bold and stands out on a pigskin. But to my way of thinking, it makes it look slightly, it's what I would describe as a country punching. It makes it look a bit heavy and a bit like a country shoe, even though it stands out. So, my sense is that, by going through the middle punching, which is the smaller gimp and the smaller punch, it's like a halfway house, really. So it's just, again, it comes down to personal choice, really. I think the big punching, just what it suggests to me.
It's too large.
Yeah, it suggests it looks a bit too large.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a brown pigskin, like a light brown, I think it would work beautifully.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, so my instant intuition is that it's either somewhere between the middle punching one or what I would call the Anthony Cleverly classic one. And the thing is, you have to decide as a client whether you want the broguing to stand out or whether you want the broguing to blend into the background. So what I would then say is the cut, is the style of the shoe enough to carry the design without having the decoration on it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're looking at the line and the cut, and both of those I think would work well with a black pigskin.
Yeah, it's such a hard choice. I mean, part of me likes the idea of kind of the subtlety of just the small punching, and if you curve the leather a little bit, it does stand out because it reflects more light than if you just kind of look at it flat. So.
Yeah, you've got to think about that, Kirby. Yeah, I can see that face. Yeah, my goodness. Yeah, where do we go?
I just don't know what we would do there. And then, of course, the Burgundy is another beautiful choice. And you've sent 2 different Burgundies. One that's the leather's got a little bit of texture to it, and then one that is more of kind of a traditional smooth Burgundy, and then a third, a kind of museum calf, if you will. So kind of what's your thinking here?
Well, I really just wanted to confuse you even more and give you even more options that you didn't really want to have to think about, really. So, I mean, you've got a classic Burgundy, which has just got a classic aniline, smooth finish, really. All of them will polish up nicely and get some good depth and some good colour. I mean, I'm not necessarily a great fan of the museum colours, which are the artificial patinas, really. I mean, a lot of people do like them, but, I'd much rather see a patina develop over time with a high-quality calf skin, really, naturally, and, through your own polishing, really, will develop a patina. I mean, they're both great. If you're interested in Burgundy, the other alternative, of course, is a Burgundy pigskin. But you have, I think one of your Doridis is in a Burgundy pigskin, isn't it? You've got a really lovely Burgundy pigskin Doridi. So, I mean, that kind of base is a bit covered unless you want more Burgundy pigskin shoes.
I mean, I like the idea of kind of a dark, aniline, kind of smooth leather. And to really kind of, really take it to push it even more towards the black side, I mean, almost like a claret or a merlot, a real dark burgundy, something that can really, just add a little bit of a touch of color to an otherwise kind of dark gray outfit, but that also you could get away with a nice navy outfit also kind of adding a touch of color. So, and I've got, plenty of black cap toes. I mean, the black cap toes you made, again, absolutely phenomenal shoes, spectacular. And so how do I add more cap toes, without just continuing to add black cap toes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how do you get more cap toes? Well, I mean, my view is that, as I say, I've got one client who only ever has two styles. He has an Oxford with a cap toe and he has a casual loafer with a casual bar. And he has them in all the colours under the sun, so he's only ever had two styles of shoe, but he's got them in endlessly different colours and in endlessly different types of leathers as well. So I don't think, I mean, really, you can't beat an Oxford cap toe Oxford, can you really? You can't go far wrong with one. But what I might suggest, Kirby, is you pop some of your black polish onto the burgundy, the smooth burgundy. Just polish it with some black and see what kind of patina you can actually create. I think that would be, you'd learn a lot from doing that, actually.
Yeah, and I'm kind of putting it, I mean, so this is the brown suede semi-brogues that you made, and just kind of wrapping that kind of along the toe cap. Again, I see myself, I'm really not opposed to the small kind of single punching. It has certainly a level of refinedness to it.
Yeah.
And subtlety to it that is really quite nice. And again, I just love the texture of this pigskin. And of course, once this is lasted, some of that texture will be pulled out of the skin. Am I correct?
It'll certainly soften, yes. It'll soften and some of the really strong texture will sort of disappear almost completely, especially over the toe caps and in places like that, in the heel, back of the heel, it's going to disappear. So yeah, the texture will change a lot as well. And I think the thing is, if you're wearing them with blue and your kind of dark style suits, it'll give you that more city look with the smaller punching with the black pigskin, I think, really. So yeah, are we talking our way round to black pigskin? I feel we are.
I mean, part of me really wants to do the black pigskin. It's kind of been something that I've been thinking about for a while, but I feel like it's like the burgundy, Balmoral, spiral cut is also such a unique shoe. I mean, talk about a kind of a conversation piece. It really is special.
With the Balmoral spiral cut, I mean, what do you think about it in terms of having a cap toe on the Balmoral? I don't know, which one have you got at the moment? Have you got the cap toe or have you...
Yeah, this has the cap on it.
Okay.
I haven't removed the cap yet because I kind of like the idea of the cap.
Oh, okay. All right, you haven't seen what's underneath the cap?
Yeah, we can remove this and see what it looks like.
Yeah, go and have a look.
The thing I like about the cap is it just breaks up what is otherwise a really elongated vamp.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so what that means, but you can't do that. You can't do that as a whole cut, unfortunately, the cap. So the idea is a bit distorted, but there you go.
But there we go. I mean, still, and and it's interesting how the addition of that extra leather, really does change the shape of the toe, right? I mean, it's a smaller toe shape just with the single piece of leather than what you get if you wrap it. Now, it still could be a kind of a spiral cut, whole cut, just with the one additional kind of footnote addendum.
Piece, yeah, with one additional piece, yeah. But I think it's important to say, Kirby, the actual, even if we removed the cap and just had it with a plain toe, either a plain toe or with the punch design that is on the end there, with a broguing on the toe, what I would have to do is remake the last so that it gave you that Negroni Clubland toe shape, because with only a single piece of leather on there, you're right, it hasn't got the scale anymore that you actually like. It looks a bit too refined and too pointed. So, but the other thing is you're also not looking at it with a toe puff and you're not looking at it with any lining leather. So it actually looks smaller than it would be in real life. So what I'd have to do, but if we took the toe cap away, I'd then have to work on the last to actually make the last a bit broader to get the toe shape back in to accommodate the lack of the leather on the front.
Tough choice, I must say. What's your intuition? Where would you go? I mean, because I don't mind it, without the toe cap. I mean, it's a beautiful medallion.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to have the toe cap on it. I'd be tempted to have the toe cap on it, and if it was in pigskin, maybe with a small refined punch on it. That would be my intuition. But luckily you've got to choose. You're the client. You decide. I'm standing down at this point.
I know. Well, that's what I love about a good relationship with the shoemaker is it's like all we need is a few Negronis, and I'm sure by the end of it we'd settle the issue. I feel like I would do the Balmoral in the Burgundy.
Oh, okay, in the Burgundy, yeah.
Yeah, and then I would do probably the this Capto semi-brogue and a black pigskin if I were to choose, right? So it's so the choice is, which one do you go with first? I feel like the Balmoral and the pigskin, you just have way too many things, too much going on.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's always fun to flirt and to daydream and to kind of play with ideas, and we've got plenty of time for that now.
Plenty of time, yeah, exactly. So you can spend all that time. You're not homeschooling or doing any of that.
Yeah.
You can actually think about what shoes you're going to have.
Yeah, thank goodness I'm not homeschooling anymore.
I can imagine.
Well, Dominic, always a pleasure, and glad to see that you're kicking along just fine.
Yeah. So what as soon as we can actually fly back to America, I've got clients who are waiting for their shoes. So, and as we said, I'm going to jump on a plane and come on over, and we'll come down to Dallas. That's for sure.
As soon as they open the gates, you're on the airplane. That's great.
Yeah, no, we'll come over. Yeah, so we'll look forward to it. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Well, it's long overdue, and it's terribly difficult to wait any longer than we already have been.
But we'll look forward to meeting up again soon.
Yeah. Well, pleasure, Dominic.
Okay. You're welcome.
Stay well. Stay safe, and thank you so much for the update. And glad to know that everything's just really kind of plugging along, and you're kind of carrying forward.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Kirby. Talk to you later. Bye now. Bye.
Dominic Casey, it's so great to be able to check in with him. I really do miss not having him in Dallas right now, but in due time, he will certainly be back, as he said, on the first flight that is opened up for him to return to America. Certainly me and a bunch of other eager clients will be awaiting his return. So as you can see, he's given me a lot to think about. Of course, his incredibly generous gift of this Wellington boot, which is a really perfect example of the Wellington. I mean, it's an authentic period piece right here with the boot trees and everything. So we look forward to some more content, kind of talking about boots, as Dominic certainly alluded to. We're working on a really in-depth series about boot making, about the creation of the Wellington boots. And the next time we get to London, we really look forward to filming that, so that will be fun. In the meantime, as you can see, I've got quite the dilemma in terms of trying to figure out what my next pair of shoes should be. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments section of this video. I'd love to hear kind of what your suggestions are. As you can see, there's a few different ways we could take this, and it's honestly a difficult choice. So I don't know where I'm going to go there in terms of what's next, but I can certainly assure you that both of these shoes will be made at some point. The only question is when. If you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner so that you can learn whenever we release new content. If you don't follow me on Instagram, please do @Kirby Allison. It's the best way to stay up to date about what's going on. And if you haven't visited KirbyAllison.com, I invite you to do so. Of course, it's how we support this YouTube channel. And there you'll find the largest collection of luxury garment care, luxury shoe care accessories in the world, as well as other great clothing accessories for the well-dressed, like this sovereign grade necktie I'm wearing, pocket squares, socks, and many, many, many other items for the well-dressed. So if you haven't visited KirbyAllison.com, please do so. Of course, I'm Kirby Allison, and I love to help the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes while discovering the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Thank you so much for watching, and do make sure you check out the other videos as a part of this London Update series.